The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
A wonderful Monday to you all, ladies and germs. It's Fantasy NBA Today, a Hoop Ball. Hoop-ball.com presentation, also brought to you by our good buddies at Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. HI Kona Coffee on Twitter. HawaiianIsles.com is the website. Hawaiian Isles on Amazon.com. Send that good stuff directly to your doorstep. Start the week right with a cup of Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company brew. You can also get their K-Cups if you're into that sort of thing. I am Dan Besbris. Dan Besbris, B-E-S-B-R-I-S. I know I've gotten into this weird habit of spelling my last name at the beginning of shows, but this is an interesting time of year for podcast hosts, and I'll just pull back the curtain quickly at the start of this thing. This is the time of year where a lot of new people are finding the podcast. I know this because I can track the listenership numbers, and around this time of year, they're higher than any other time of year. So somebody out there is listening that hasn't listened before, and I'd love it if all of you guys, especially the new guys and gals, subscribe to the show on whatever service you're using, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. We finally got iHeartRadio fixed last week, thank the good Lord, so that's back up and running. And drop a 5-star review on the bad boy if that's something that you can do at your portal as well. And then also, please do follow me on Twitter, at Dan Besbris, D-A-N-B-E-S-B-R-I-S, Besbris, B as in boy, E-S as in Sam, B as in boy, R-I-S as in Sam. I do a lot on Twitter, a lot, needlessly large amount of things happen on Twitter for me. And so I would really appreciate it if you guys followed me there, because then we can continue our conversations. I talk about fantasy sports a lot. I answer questions on Twitter. I do tweet storms when the season gets going. It'll be worth your while. I promise. So that's at Dan Besbris. Welcome to another week of Fantasy NBA Today. We've got 2 more pros to go through today and tomorrow. We'll have Adam King on the show today of Fantrax, Adam Stock of Elite Fantasy Basketball. He'll be on tomorrow. And we also have to continue our exploration of over and undervalued Yahoo guys. We started that on Friday's show, and then straight up ran out of time. That show ended up being like an hour and 15 minutes long, and then I thought, I better stop this thing. And so that curled us into today. We have some partners to tell you about, mybookie.ag. We'll tell you about that in the middle of the show. We have another coupon code to tell you about. We also have the B150 is officially in the draft guide today. Today's the day. It's Christmas in October. October the 7th, 2019 is the day that Aaron Bruski put the B150 into the draft guide. So no longer do you need to get any kind of early draft or early B150 subscription. If you go to hoop-ball.com and look under the premium tab, you can get the draft guide. Just go to buy the draft guide. It's $19.99, but we're going to have a coupon code later in today's podcast. You can get it knocked down to $16.99, and it's got the B150 in it. Aaron Bruski's top 150 players ranked with projections. It is glorious. And if you have that, you're going to clobber your league. That's pretty much all you need, unless you're in a super, hyper, mega competitive league, and in which case that bad boy will get you set up in the top couple, and then you just have to stay on top of it throughout the year, and you'll win that one too. Every year since Hoop Ball has been in existence, the B150 has beaten the projections of competitive sites. Brew is hoping to continue that streak. He has a whole, it's color-coded and it's crazy, but it's out there at Hoop Ball as well, where he broke down how he fared against some of the top sites in the industry. You can check that out so you can see the methodology. That way we're not just yelling things from the rooftops here. And again, stay tuned for the coupon later in the show. I'm also going to tell you about the recruiting efforts later in the podcast as well, so stay tuned for that. But we're 4 minutes into this thing, and I haven't done anything of value to you guys, so let's just jump right in. Adam King, I want to do this thing. He's waited long enough. We recorded this like a week and a half ago, and the poor guy's had to wait to hear his segment air, but he's been very patient. He's happily running our league, a 20-team industry Roto league. That's also happening. Let's jump right into that now. Pro Weeks on Fantasy NBA Today. I do enjoy this time of year. This is where I get to either argue or happily agree with at least, and there will be 11 here that have to do with the mock draft, but at least 11 of the best minds in Fantasy NBA today. Today I am joined by the great Adam King at AdamKing91. If you want to give him a follow on Twitter, I suggest that you do. ADAMKING, and then the number's 91. He's the lead fantasy basketball analyst over at Fantrax, where we had this draft. Adam, welcome to the show. First time on the pod, I think, right?
It is. It's the first, my first time on any pod. So very excited to be here.
Wow, this is going to be a great day. I'm just going to ruin your experience for podcasts forever.
This will be my first and last podcast.
Yeah, I was going to say. Well, it was fun. At least I got to be the one to destroy this world for you.
That's right. That's right.
So, briefly, since it is inaugural, your podcast debut, I figure, we can use a moment here to just kind of introduce you a little bit. How did you end up over at Fantrax? How long you been over there? And tell your buddies thanks for helping us host this draft.
Yeah, look, I think I started in fantasy basketball by accident probably 6 years ago. Fell into it just because some of the guys I actually play basketball with were into it, and they had a team that opened up. I enjoyed doing the write-ups for them every week, and I thought, well, this is something I could do on a more permanent basis. So I got in touch with Josh Lloyd over at Basketball Monster. He pointed me in the right direction. I linked in with RotoWire actually first, and went from there. I heard on the grapevine that Fantrax were looking for someone to lead up their fantasy basketball team, so I made contact with them, and here we are. So I've been with them now for about a year.
Outstanding. Yeah. Now, I don't mean to make any presumptions here, but your accent doesn't sound that dissimilar from the great Josh Lloyd. Are you guys near to one another?
We're close in comparison to how close you are to Josh Lloyd. So he's down in Melbourne, and I'm near Canberra. So we're about 7 hours apart, 7 hours drive.
Okay, that's not crazy. That's like half of California. I can wrap my head around that. That's about the distance from Los Angeles to the Bay Area. A little bit more, I guess.
Yeah, right. So not that far. And I drive down there regularly, so it's really not that far. I was in the States in July for the first time, and so got a bit of an idea of distance for you guys as well. So for some countries, 7 hours is a long way, but for us, it's not, and for you guys, it's not either.
Well, of course, we would list that in miles here, which is
miles.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you guys?
Yes.
Am I misremembering? Do you guys have a minor league baseball team there? In the Australian Winter League?
I wouldn't know. I know absolutely nothing about baseball. So
I think it's the Cavalry. We'll have to check. On that.
I think we do, and I think they might be reasonably successful too. I'm not sure.
I think that we may have. I'm channeling my own weird past. I think we may have had a kid who played for our team in Bakersfield in California here that played in the Australian Baseball League. I might be getting the team wrong. I can't remember if it was you guys, the Cavalry, or if it was somewhere else. In any event, not super important. The main point here is welcome to the podcast. I've already gotten weird. Again, Adam King is who we've got on today's show. Let's break down your draft because, and before we even dive into the first pick, you sent me a screenshot on Twitter before this show that had you placing relatively well in terms of projections. Should we start a little battle among the pros here, since I think you were actually at the top of it?
I was, yes. I was very surprised. I know, as you have mentioned on some of your podcasts, the draft sort of went to a bad place towards the final few rounds, and we actually got one of the Fantrax lead guys in there, he jumped in and tried to fix things, but he obviously couldn't. So
I took matters into my own hands at that point, and I was like, you know what? I had about an hour 15 from when that happened to get to the supermarket and back and start cooking dinner. And so finally, I just said, you know what? I'm just going to set everybody to auto pick, and I'm going to hit up each one of these guys to get their 12th round pick. And I'm putting Boogie Cousins as every single team's 13th rounder. So congratulations, you have Boogie Cousins on your team.
Oh, I do, and I'll wait for him to return and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm guessing it'll be a fairly even playing field since everybody has him in this league. So it ended up being a 12. Right. It ended up being a 12-round draft instead of 13. But honestly, for our purposes, that's kind of enough. And we can just dive right in. Your first round pick, you had 3rd overall, and you managed to get James Harden. I feel like that's probably considered a battle won. He doesn't usually fall to 3.
No, look, I think that's probably the pick we need to talk least about.
Yeah, agreed.
I was happy to get him there. I don't have him as number 1 in my rankings. I have Cat and AD above him, but they both went. So
there you go.
It was hard for me.
Yeah, easy one. I mean, if you got
easy.
It's funny actually that just to kind of date when these podcasts are being recorded. They're all going to be airing out of order, but I've spoken to you, Adam, today, along with Kyle McEwen and Josh Lloyd, and that actually knocks out 3 of the top 5, which is interesting. I didn't even see it coming as I was sort of planning out my schedule for the day. So on none of the hits that I've recorded today, we've really had to talk about the first-round pick at all. That's going to be coming up on some of my different days of analysis. So let's just jump right ahead, because, that's an obvious one. James Harden is an easy top 5, blah, 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 etc. Nick Vucevic at 22, coming back in the second round. This feels like a really safe play, a guy that outperformed that. Yes, it was a contract year. I know everybody has these weird fears because he did run into some injury stuff earlier in his time in Orlando, but I mean, if he plays even close to what he did last year, then this is an easy grab to make. He feels like a pretty safe second-round pick in a round where a lot of riskier guys are going. So I really like this one.
Yeah, look, he was. I probably so looking at my notes here, I actually would have gone DeAndre Ayton above him, but Josh took him before me.
The pick right before I think it was. Yeah, right.
Yeah, he was right before me. Yeah, so no, look, I mean, Vucevic is fine there. I think he was sort of a first round, back of the first round guy last season on a per game basis. So whether he can reach those heights again, I'm not sure, but I'm happy to get him at the back end of the second round. I think he's a pretty safe top 20 sort of player.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then my take on this type of stuff. I always feel like if you can just not mess up the first 3 rounds, you basically put yourself in position to be a top 3 or 4 team in your league, provided you don't, you can't, the rest of the draft can't be a complete disaster, but if you don't mess up your first 3 rounds, you're going to be in contention. It's just that simple because those guys are so important.
Yeah, no, I think when I sort of broke down my draft here, and I've been listening to your podcasts on the Yahoo ADPs over the last few days, I actually think my first 5 picks are probably picks that you're going to be okay with.
You're absolutely right. I didn't even want to lump them all together, but now you've put it out there. I love your first 5, man. This is exactly the way I would have gone in those 5 spots.
Yeah, so my third, I mean, as we said, Vucevic, very safe there.
You went safe in the third also.
I did, yeah. Look, Miles Turner with my third pick, needing to chase blocks a little bit, given that Vucevic isn't sort of prolific in that category, and blocks can be tough to find later in drafts. So I just thought getting him there ensures that I'm at least going to be competitive in blocks. And again, he finished last season as the 26th ranked player. So
yeah,
right on par there. Whether he goes up or down doesn't really faze me. I think back end of the second round, early third round is fine. So I'm happy with him there.
I agree. And I think I feel like we should throw one disclaimer on him that I for whatever reason, haven't really brought up on shows to this point. He got off to a really slow start this last season and then went bananas for the last 4.5 months. I don't feel like, even I don't even fully remember it. I had him in a couple of spots, and I was always fairly confident that he would get it turned around. And then he got it turned around to an absurd degree. You know, he was floating around in that top 85 range for about a month last year, and then he went nuts. So for those of you that draft him this coming season, keep that in mind if he gets off to a slow start. For those of you that don't draft him, keep that in mind in case you want to think about buying him if he gets off to a slow start. But inevitably, Adam, you're absolutely right. He's going to get his blocks. It's a great guy to get. He can single-handedly keep you in the upper half of your league in that category. And then you went fourth round, and I think we may end up spending a long time on this one. Rob Covington, who
Yes.
is one of my favorite fantasy players in the NBA, and you put him right next to one of my other favorites. But I don't want to get ahead of myself yet. I'm going to ask you the question that people keep asking me, because I've had to sort of defend myself on the Rob Covington front a few times here lately, and you've probably heard me doing that. His ADP is around 40. When he's healthy, last year he was inside the top 20, but he was not healthy at all last year. And I've gone on record as saying I think he probably could have come back towards the end of the season. I don't know if that's true. I'm sure the Timberwolves would deny it. Do you think he could have come back at the end of the year, or do you think he was really, truly hurt? I don't know. I feel like the Wolves need him so badly this season, which is both a good and a bad thing. They could end up overusing him. I'm just not afraid. I mean, even if I only get 65 games out of him, I still think it's going to be a really cool season.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. I think he probably could have come back, but we'll never get any official word on that. But yeah, look, he for every season he falls. He sits around 40 when you go into drafts, and even at 40, people will question me, why are you taking him there? But I mean, you look at his ranks from the last few seasons, and he's been a top 40 player at least for the last 3 years. And in Minnesota, he's probably going to sort of shift into that power forward position, so I can see his rebound numbers going up.
Yeah, you're making me salivate over here, man. This is all the stuff I want to hear.
Yeah, and look, defensive stats obviously are where a lot of his value comes from, but he hits a lot of threes. Minnesota traditionally don't have a lot of perimeter scoring, so they're going to need him out there jacking up threes. And look, the fact that I got him at 46, I was pretty excited that he was even still sitting there. So I think, along with the rest of my top 5, I think he could easily be a top 30, top 25 kind of guy. So,
and here's the other part. Here's the other note on Bob is, and this is kind of what I've talked about as well, there is a very real possibility that he misses some time. He's had knee issues throughout his short NBA career, and I think a reasonable person, I like to think that I might be a reasonable person sometimes, would say, okay, yeah, I love him with all of my heart, and I love his fantasy game, but yeah, he probably is going to miss 10 games this year. He's probably going to miss 10 games. I'm okay with that. And I'm also particularly okay with it, Adam, for your team, for the reasons we just talked about. You went ultra safe the first 3 picks, so you could have a little bit of risk with your 4th rounder in Covington. And people don't think of him as kind of like your risky upside play, but from an actual value standpoint, that's what he is. If he stays healthy for 72 games this year, at 46, he's going to be a whopper of a value. If he only stays healthy for 60-something, well, then he maybe gets pretty close to that ADP or slightly behind it. But I think this is a spot where you could roll the dice, especially then you went safe in the 5th round again. So that's perfectly reasonable to take a little bit of a shot in one of those first 5 picks. Was that something that was going through your head at all as you got to this? Or were you just kind of like, I love Rob Covington, I want him, because Lord knows I've had that feeling before.
I think more the second. I think I just love Rob Covington. I love the Timberwolves as well. I always have a soft spot for them. So, but I'm not too worried about the injuries. I mean, prior to last season, he played 80 games. And I just think, I mean, as you mentioned earlier, he probably could have come back last season, but the Wolves had nothing to play for. So I'm not too concerned. If he can, I'd be happy if you get sort of 70 games out of him. He was the 16th ranked player last season.
Yeah, man.
So
That's a trade I made that will crush me for a long time, and yet I still harbor no ill will towards Rob. I can't remember exactly who I traded. I think I ended up with Rob Covington and Jimmy Butler in a deal in a league where I was it was a head-to-head, and I think that I had decided I was punting something. Might have been assists. I traded away someone, and maybe points as well. And so I just had this team that was racking up defensive stats and never turning the ball over. And then if Covington goes down and that's your build, that was a kind of a shot to the groin. Your fifth-round pick at pick number 51, and by the way, I forgot to list off Covington. You said it was 46. You actually did that.
46.
Yeah, you did that job for me there, so thank you. Otto Porter at 51. He's going to be dynamite this year. Another guy, I guess you have to sort of hope he stays on the floor enough games because he only played 56 last season. But he was inside the top 40 last year, and he's been inside the top 30 a number of times. He's going late this year. It has to be fear of injury, right? There's no other reason why he should be going this late.
Yeah, I think it has to be. And I mean, partly, possibly because he's on, the team